Rest in peace, John Wilkes Booth. You would have loved the opera scene from Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Mission Impossible! Who gives a crap? Mission Impossible! That's right, we're diving into the action-adventure film franchise that stars everyone's favorite Hollywood power couple, Tom Cruise and near-death experiences. For the longest time, I've written these films off as nothing more than generic action slop that gets churned out on a bi-yearly basis just so FX has something to air on a Sunday afternoon. Sort of like the Fast and Furious films. But after watching the movies for myself, maybe I should stop insulting Fast and Furious. It has become one of my favorite film franchises, and you might have picked up on that by my tendency to use clips from the films in my videos. Are they peak cinema? Not really, but when it comes to your typical blockbuster affair, there's an argument to be made that this franchise comes the closest to being it. And unlike a lot of film franchises that started off great but declined after a sequel or two, these movies have only gotten better. Name another film franchise where the second film is considered the worst and the fourth one is considered the best. Of course, just as a flower comes from an egg, everything has an orange, and this franchise's orange is not other than 1996's Mission Impossible. A film that, despite the popularity of the franchise it spawned, carries a mixed reputation with both critics when it first released and average viewers today. After 30 plus years, does it even hold a candle to its successors? Well, no, it doesn't have Benji Dunn in it. But outside of that, is it a good film? Well, before delving into that question, here's a little background. The origins of Mission Impossible can be traced all the way back to the fateful year of 1966. Some people might actually be unaware of the original television series that inspired the movies, but it gave us some of the iconography that has become synonymous with spy fiction to this very day, such as the iconic theme song or the self-destructing message. The series centered around an organization known as the Impossible Mission Force, or IMF for short, carrying out high-stakes operations through wit, gadgetry, and occasionally brute force. Essentially, they're the bad guys, but more heroic and with much less of a DeviantArt footprint. The series clearly cashed in on the Cold War era that it originated in, and because of that, it became pretty popular, lasting 7 seasons, going from September of 1966 before coming to a close in March of 1973. After the series and a short-lived reboot went off the air, plans arose to adapt the series into a feature film, but it wasn't until a Mission Impossible fan by the name of Tom Cruise approached Paramount Pictures about the concept that the ball get rolling on the project, eventually garnering other big actors like Ving Rhames, John Voight, and Jean Reno. The film's star power, however, extended far beyond who appeared on screen, with David Koepp, a writer of Jurassic Park, Robert Towne, the writer for Chinatown, and Steven Zaillian, the writer for Schindler's List, all lending their talents to the film's script, and with the film being directed by De Palma? Brian De Palma! For those unaware, De Palma is a suspense-focused director who is most well known for the 1976 adaptation of Carrie and Al Pacino's Scarface, but we'll discuss his impact on the film later. Now, the most prolific behind-the-scenes talent this movie had to offer would be none other than Tom Cruise himself. You see, this was the first film that he produced, which gave him the freedom to perform his own stunts, something that would go on to become a major proponent of this franchise's appeal. Apparently, people like watching Tom Cruise end his life, and I guess Tom Cruise feels the same way. At this point, I'm pretty sure Edge of Tomorrow is just a documentary on his life. Mission Impossible would debut on May 22nd, 1996, and how did it perform? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but judging by the fact that I own this movie on Blu-ray in a combo pack including 5 of its sequels, I'm gonna assume that it did well. Well, the film was a financial hit, with it making $457 million on a budget of $80 million. It was more uneven critically. Some praised it for its well-designed action scenes and the actors' performances, but others criticized how convoluted the story was and how far it strayed from the original source material. But after all this time, has this first outing improved with age, or has it been left behind in the wake of this franchise quite literally reaching higher heights? You're watching the LionDog Show, and I'm watching 1996's Mission Impossible. The film kicks off with Tom Cruise looking directly at the camera and thanking the audience for seeing the movie in theaters, is what I would have said if this film were made today, but this was 1996 when filmmakers couldn't care less how you watch their movies. The film actually begins with an in-progress IMF mission where an agent named Jack is watching an argument between a Discord mod and Sonic Movie 1 Eggman in hopes of the mod revealing the name of his associates, which only on this viewing am I realizing that this is foreshadowing to the major conflict of the film. After Jack gets the names, Eggman then drugs the mod before exiting the room and BAM! Tom Cruise jump scare! Gotta say, characters ripping off their rubber masks to reveal themselves as MIF agent Ethan Hunt ranks pretty high in my top 10 love languages. After the opening credits that pay homage to the show's classic introduction, we cut over to the only character from the original series returning for this film, Jim Phelps. They initially planned for Jim's original actor Peter Graves to reprise his role, but he turned it down for reasons that we'll discuss later. So for those who wanted a television-accurate Jim Phelps, too bad, you get the dad from National Treasure instead. A flight attendant then offers Jim a movie, but he responds with, "Sorry, I only watch real movies, like National Treasure 2 Book of Secrets."
I'm gonna kidnap the President of the United States.
But then the attendant snaps back with, "I'm not exactly asking." Once Jim inserts the tape, it's revealed to be a trademark mission briefing detailing a double agent named Golitsyn who plots to steal a file that contains the identities of agents called the Knocklist during a party at the US's embassy in Prague, and deciding Jim with the mission of obtaining proof of the theft and tracking Golitsyn to his buyer. Once the briefing concludes, it pulls a Dr. Doofenshmirtz invention and self-destructs, which Jim covers up by causing an asthma attack, which you could totally get away with in an airplane today. Yeah, based on this airplane setup and the tech used all throughout, this movie is up there with Space Jam and a Goofy movie in terms of being one of the most 90s movies ever made. You can tell that the filmmakers wanted to make a Mission Impossible for the new age, with the most state-of-the-art gadgets, but in doing so, they ended up making this film just as dated as the original show. This isn't your grandparents' Mission Impossible. This is your parents' Mission Impossible. Despite seeming like this might hold the film back, I honestly think it works in the film's favor. As you'll soon see, this can be a pretty cheesy movie at points, and the way the characters treat long, obsolete technology so seriously only adds to it all. Seeing as the International League of Heroes are too busy not getting their own spin-off book, Jim recruits the team from the prologue for his mission, comprising of Sarah as their way into the party, Hannah as the lookout, Jack as the hacker, Claire as the vehicle cover, and Ethan as the master of disguise going undercover as the US Senator. Fun fact, that guy is just Tom Cruise in makeup. They literally disguised Tom Cruise as Tom Cruise. You can't make this stuff up. Before heading out, the team prepares with some tried and true spy gadgets, including a pair of glasses with a built-in video camera and gum that explodes when you press both sides together. Doubt that will ever come back into play.
Hasta lasagna, don't get any on you.
And that's now entering my vocabulary. Fast forward to the night of the 1996 Good Samaritan Award ceremony. Sarah guides Orville Rettenbucker, Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise through the US Embassy to help him find the computer room. The elevator to the room is blocked by biometric verification, and since Ethan couldn't get a high-quality image of newly elected Governor Dianne Foxington's eye, he gets Jack to hack into the security system to register Sarah's fingerprint. The hacking gets delayed by some elevator tomfoolery before Jack ultimately gets them inside.
That date with Sarah is definitely off.
Oh, come on, Ethan. Sure, he's not the fastest hacker in the West, but I'm sure he has a wonderful personality. Or at least, he used to, because after Ethan and Sarah set up a pair of glasses to record Golitsyn stealing the Knocklist and start making love at midnight in the dooms of the Cape, the elevator begins to move on its own and... You don't think they'll notice one of our teammates missing, do you? After Jack gets smacked, Jim goes jogging to help Ethan while Sarah tags Golitsyn. But once Jim realizes that someone's tailing him, Ethan races to save him, only to check his Apple Watch to see Uncle Ben get shot for the 19th time. Ethan then pleads with Sarah to abort, but she doesn't listen. Yeah, see how well that turns out for her. Okay, we may be losing agents left and right, but surely they won't kill off Claire or Hannah. You can't keep doing this to me, De Palma! Guess I'm calling an Uber home. Seeing as his teammates are dead and the
list is in the open!
Ethan arranges a meeting with CIA Director Kittredge to discuss the matter. This film really wants you to take this guy seriously, but after finding out in Dead Reckoning that his name is Eugene, that just refuses to happen for me. During this scene, Ethan discovers that his IMF mission was merely a wild goose chase intended to expose a mole within the agency who planned to sell the Knocklist to a dealer named Max in an operation called Job 314. And since Ethan is the only member left, well, better cancel your plans for The Last Samurai 2, Tom Cruise. Not to be taken in for a crime he didn't commit, Ethan escapes Eugene's clutches by... Well, I'm not a psychic. God, I am so getting fired for that. Also, it pains me to say this, but this is the last time that Ethan runs in this movie. Sad day for Tom Cruise enjoyers the world over. After returning to the safe house, Ethan pours shards of a broken light bulb on the floor to alert him of any intruders. Guess he forgot to stuff his pockets with miscellaneous Lego bricks that day. Okay, to be serious for a bit, I love these top-down shots and odd angles after the botched mission. These artistic decisions of De Palma's work wonders in helping the viewers feel just as unnerved and paranoid as Ethan in these moments. Speaking of Ethan, I feel this movie is the most desperate we've seen him. The closest we've gotten to this since then would probably be in the third movie after Julia gets captured, but outside of that, even with the world's safety hanging in the balance, he always seems to have a laid-back attitude with a backup plan or two. Even under similar circumstances in Rogue Nation, he still keeps a cool head for the most part. Here, he gets thrown for a loop without anyone to trust and is just scrambling to stay alive. The scene later on where Ethan convinces Krager that his floppy disk is a fake demonstrates this so well. He is just making it all up as he goes and is hoping no one catches on. It makes for such an exciting plot. When Ethan can't find any information on neither Max nor Job 314, Ethan notices a Bible and realizes that Job 314 refers to the Bible verse. Okay, I know not everyone's a Christian, but not a single person at the CIA made that connection. With this angle, Ethan then starts emailing different message boards in hopes of finding a lead. Okay, back when this film released, I'm pretty sure that email was this futuristic concept, but nowadays this plot point is just hilarious. I'm gonna email Mr. Max and tell him to stop being mean to my friend. After sending a couple of emails, Ethan turns into his alter ego, Tom Snooze, before being awakened by Jim, who returns from the spirit realm to tell Ethan that he looks like a broken promise. This turns out to be a dream when he wakes up to find out that Claire is alive, and in this fearful, confusing time for her, hopefully Ethan will be there to comfort her.
Wake up, Claire! Jim's dead! They're dead! They're all dead!
Also, Ethan interrogating Claire out of context makes this look like a very different movie. The following day, Ethan receives an invitation to meet Max at her apartment. We then get this cool POV shot as he gets picked up by her henchmen. So this is how Scientologists see the world. Also, yes, I said her, as Max is actually a woman. Apparently this was never in the original script, but her performance was so good that they gave her the role anyway, and I can see why. She is one fluffy cat on her lap away from being a quintessential supervillain, and I am here for it. Ethan tries warning Max that the floppy disk that her men stole from Galitzin is actually a beacon for Eugene to pinpoint her location via the Find My app, but since Ethan forgot to cite his sources, she installs the disk anyway, and uh-oh, the CIA is raiding her clubhouse. I just love the cleaning lady who just keeps vacuuming while the raid is taking place. To be fair, you don't want to arrest an arms dealer on a filthy carpet, do you? After making a swift getaway, Ethan and Max are now besties, and they come to an agreement that if Ethan supplies her with the real knock list, she'll introduce her to Job. A feat easier said than done, with the knock list being contained in a secured vault within the CIA's headquarters that is sound sensitive, heat sensitive, and touch sensitive. If Ethan wants to find the true mole to clear his name, he's gotta put on the greatest heist the world has never seen, and he knows just the team to do it. Unfortunately, all 9 of those guys got food poisoning from the nearby Dairy Queen last night, so Ethan and Claire settle for Luther and Krieger, 2 disavowed IMF agents who Ethan convinces to work for them in exchange for the hardware they have.
I'm talking about the 686 prototypes with the artificial intelligence wrist.
Nerd! Another fun fact, Luther's actor, Bing Rames, is the Arby's announcer. Are we sure Tom Cruise is the real movie star of this film? The 4 then head off to break into the CIA headquarters under the guise of putting out a fire. Where exactly did they get all the firefighter equipment? Now that's a heist I want to see. This brings us to the moment you've all been waiting for, the vault scene. And yeah, it's as good as people claim it is. It is such a simple concept, yet so tense despite it not being a life-threatening beat like the action scenes that would succeed it. Ethan is essentially behind enemy lines in an environment that leaves barely any room for error. It makes every little slip-up that happens throughout the scene so frightening, and every quick recovery so exhilarating. I still flinch while watching this scene to this day. Another detail that stands out to me is the sparing usage of music throughout the scene. It really allows the tension to speak for itself. There's a reason this scene has been parodied so many times. At this point, it's as iconic as the self-destructing message that this movie is homaging. It's also a pretty entertaining scene outside of Ethan's escapades, as you also have Claire spiking this guy's coffee so he won't walk into the vault. You got them accidentally dropping the knife, serving as an unintentional calling card. You got Krieger farting in the vents and nearly killing Luther. Truly the crowning jewel of this movie. Another fun fact, in the knock list, there is someone with the codename Maverick. However, here it belongs to someone named John Dory. I'm pretty sure that's a Trolls Band Together character. After the team escapes, we get that scene I mentioned earlier with Ethan convincing Krieger that he has a blank disc. And it's during this scene that he notices that the Bible that he found in the safe house came from a hotel that Jim mentioned visiting. Nothing suspicious about that. Soon after, Ethan sees on the news that his mom has been framed for being in possession of the Wario pill, so Ethan heads over to a payphone to hurl various schoolyard insults at Eugene when BAM! John Boy jump scare. Jim survived, and while he and Ethan catch up over coffee, he reveals that Eugene shot him on the bridge and reassures Ethan that he didn't do it. How could he? After all, he's such a good boy. Wait! It was Jim the whole time! He's the one who caused the elevator to kill Jack! He's the one who stabbed both Sarah and Galitzin to steal the decoy knocklist! He's the one who blew up the car with Hannah inside! He's the old lady that Ethan saved from nearly falling down the stairs! He's the reason that hot dogs come in packages of 10 despite the fact that hot dog buns come in packages of 8, meaning you have to buy another package of buns to eat the rest of the hot dogs and then buy another package of hot dogs to eat the rest of the buns! It's extortion! Okay, some of those were a joke. Gregor was the one who killed Sarah and Galitzin. This revelation is revealed to the audience through a series of flashbacks, and while I normally hate when movies use flashbacks to previous scenes to explain a plot twist, I think it's executed pretty well here by revisiting the agent's demise from Jim's perspective, and by using the flashbacks to visualize Ethan coming to the realization that Jim betrayed him while still playing along with his deception. This, however, doesn't stop the film from doing this unnecessarily, like with Ethan mentioning the other IMF members who shadowed his team, or when he noticed that the Bible came from the hotel that Jim mentioned earlier in the film. Good setup is like a joke. It fails the moment you explain it. It would be like if I explained the bit of me assuming that the exploding gun would never come back into play only for it to show up again. It would ruin the magic. Wouldn't it be more interesting if they removed these flashbacks and voiceovers, and when you rewatch the film, you notice how the waiter is staring at Hannah just like Ethan mentioned during the restaurant scene? Of course it would be. Filmmakers, stop assuming that your audience isn't smart enough to remember something from an hour ago. Moviegoers aren't stupid. Most of the time! After coming to his conclusion, Ethan asks Jim, why did you do it? Jim then explains how after the Cold War ended, Eugene, has been feeling underestimated, underappreciated, and wanted to get back at the system that has neglected him. Okay, I feel two ways about this twist. On the positive end, I find it to be a clever meta-commentary on how the original show was popularized by the Cold War, and how it could be seen as obsolete once the war ended. Also, since this was long before the subversion of expectations became the norm, this likely made for a major twist for longtime fans. Despite all that,
Really? 5 homicides and that's your reason?
when talking about how much his life sucks after the war, Jim mentions,
You got a lousy marriage and 62 grand a year.
okay, first off, unless the IMF arranged for him and Claire to get married— oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that they're married. That's an issue between those two, and only those two. Second, based on some quick research, assuming that the film takes place in the same year that it released, that being 1996, 62 grand would be fairly above the average income for a US couple at the time. Is that really cause for going rogue? Also, if you wanted to get revenge on the higher-ups, why would you target your fellow spies who have nothing to do with your situation? Wouldn't it be better to— I don't know.
Kidnap the President of the United States.
But no! Because of Jim, 3 innocent IMF agents are
Dead! They're all dead!
Now, maybe Jim's motivation isn't supposed to make you feel sympathetic towards him, and maybe the filmmakers just wanted him to be an evil villain that looks out only for himself. But the film already has that type of villain with Max. I definitely understand why the original actor declined being in the film. During the scene, Ethan also explains how he arranged the exchange with Max to take place on a train heading to Paris. Yes, that is what I am talking about! How does it feel, Dinosaur George? We got the third act of 2 Mission Impossible movies, and you got the good dinosaur! The following day on the train, we see Eugene searching cars for both Ethan and Max while she receives her disc, but her attempts to upload her files online get delayed by Luther jamming the signal. While all this is playing out, an unknown figure disassembles a radio and turns it into a gun. Yeah, I'd do the same if radio stations stopped playing Christmas music and are broadcasting something called Doom Tunes instead! Claire then finds Jim in the luggage car where it's revealed that she was working for him the whole time. But while she's talking to him, BAM! John Boy Tom Cruise jump scare. Hold up. How exactly did Ethan get that Jim mask? We learned in the third movie that they can basically 3D print one with multiple reference photos. So does Ethan just have a reference of Jim's face on him at all times?
I got life-size molds of all my friends.
Soon after, the real Jim barges in holding the gun that he assembled earlier. Why did they bother hiding Jim's face? Maybe it was done to build suspense, but at this point in the film, it's pretty obvious that he's the mole. The only real mystery left was whether Claire was in cahoots with him. Was this your plan all along, Jim? Making this mission impossible? Hold up. Say that again. Can't tell if that's better or worse than the title drop they did in movie 2.
This is not mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. It's mission impossible.
At this moment, Ethan pulls a Sam Sparks and puts his nerd glasses back on to record evidence of Jim being alive to Eugene, a plot point that would not work today. Ethan, stop playing around with deepfake technology and just turn yourself in already. Jim isn't all that pleased being on the receiving end of a who do you think put that one push pop in the fridge moment, so he starts firing off his little Nerf toy only for Claire to die from it. That's what you get for spiking a man's coffee. With Ethan knocked out, Jim starts scaling the train's roof to escape on Krager's helicopter. This brings us to this film's exciting climax. Okay, so Jim is scaling the roof with magnet cups while Ethan is flailing around like a ragdoll and looking like Adam Sandler. Then Ethan joins the anti-type movement to no avail. Jim tries to hook himself to the copter, but then Ethan intervenes by hooking the copter to the train and doing this. Jim kicks Ethan to the side, and with no choice, Krager flies the copter into a tunnel as his conductor is a hapless observer of all this. Jim unhooks the cord while Ethan Hunt pulls an Ethan Hunt and hangs off the edge of something. Jim hops onto the rail of the copter, and then Krager lowers it down to give Ethan a haircut, then BAM! The tail bumps the roof. Ethan then harnesses all his main character energy and jumps onto the rails as this Indiana Jones music kicks in that turns into the Mission Impossible theme. Ethan pulls out another stick of gum once again. I am so glad I didn't bet money on that never showing up again. Then Ethan shouts his favorite preschool game. Red light! Green light! He slams the gum on the copter, causing it to explode, propelling Ethan back on the train. Krager's dead, Jim's dead, the copter becomes a fiery wreckage that follows Ethan until both it and the train come to a screeching halt just before the blade cuts Ethan's throat. And this guy probably seeks psychiatric help! Guys, you gotta help me as this movie's it! It's been lost! Even a lot of people who love this movie still admit that this finale just doesn't jive with how grounded the rest of the movie's action is. And I'm no different. Yeah, I know I complimented this film for being cheesy at points earlier, but this is a bridge too far for even me. I will actually defend it somewhat by saying that they do allude to Krager's piloting techniques earlier when he talks about how he can pilot a helicopter into Fort Knox. Maybe more people would get it if they flashed back to that line just before he flew into the tunnel. Also, I can see the ambition in this climax. This was a series that was always restricted to the budget of 1960s television, so this could be seen as giving this series a huge action set piece that it never got before. Still, there is serious tonal whiplash when most of this film involves small-scale practical action only for it to end with a 4D theme park attraction. To be honest, the green screen doesn't look too bad when they're outside, but once they enter the tunnel it starts looking like a cutscene for the Mission Impossible N64 game. Overall, it feels like the filmmakers wanted to make this big climax because they had the resources to do it, rather than they needed to do it. After all that's behind Ethan, he meets up with Luther, who's been welcomed back to the IMF while Ethan steps away from the Force. Why would he do such a thing? They've been so nice to him! However, on the plane ride home, a flight attendant tries to give Ethan the movie, and when he refuses, she says, "I'm not exactly asking," leading Ethan to join the 62 grand a year lifestyle once more. And with that, the movie comes to a close. I love this movie. It's not perfect, there's definitely a few plot holes here and there, and the characters are kind of a mixed bag, but this is easily one of the movies that I rewatched the most. You would think that for a franchise that has evolved throughout its 8-movie run, this film would be somewhat obsolete, but I actually think it stands out better for that very reason. As I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate movies that still feature a plot with high stakes without the safety of the world being at risk. Ethan isn't stopping biochemical terrorism, nuclear war, or ChatGPT in this film. He's fighting to clear his name and protect his fellow agents' identities. A motive that the audience becomes invested in after seeing what could happen to all of them if the information fell into the wrong hands. Because the plot is so small and focused, I'm able to be more invested in it than if the world was on the verge of exploding. This small-scale focus also applies to the action scenes. The center of this film isn't Ethan scaling a building or motorcycling off a cliff. I'm definitely not discrediting those stunts, once again documentary, but the vault scene's simplicity and tension allow it to be just as exciting and memorable as the spectacles that would follow it. If anything, this film's only action fumbles come when it tries punching above its weight. Now, I'm aware that using the word simple to describe anything in this film might sound oxymoronic, but I don't think the plot is as convoluted as people think. The basic premise of an agent framed for a crime he didn't commit and playing both sides of the law in order to clear his name is easy enough to follow. It's the hows and whys of it all that make it a little confusing, but the simple yet dense nature of the plot make it a great film to rewatch to pick up on all the details, despite the film's occasional hand-holding nature diminishing that trait at points. Moving over to the characters, the initial IMF team is likable enough that you care when they get offed, but not too interesting that you're disappointed that they're not in the rest of the movie. Kid Trister is a solid secondary antagonist, but I feel he peaked with his introductory scene. Buying a Nintendo Switch 2 at launch. which with a handful of games, after all, can be a very expensive proposition. Max isn't enough of the film that her classic sinister villain flair gets to shine without it getting too old. Craker is a fine enough loose cannon. While I like the concept behind Jim's portrayal in this film, his motivation is pretty weak, and the rogue agent who wants to dismantle the system was executed much better with Solomon Lane from movies 5 and 6. As for Claire, I could not care less for her whether good or evil. Ethan and Luther are really the only standout characters, and that's probably the reason the two show up in every subsequent film. Well, than the fact that they're some of the only main characters to survive. But you still see a glimpse of their dynamic that plays throughout the rest of the series. Finally, when it comes to being an adaptation of the show, it could have been better. I totally understand the disappointment critics and audiences at the time must have felt towards this film. They likely went to see this film expecting it to follow the classic spy ensemble formula, only to be met with a fugitive story with spy elements. Even though it's great, it still must have been a disappointment. However, now that we have films like Ghost Protocol that recapture the magic of the original show for a new generation, it's now easier to appreciate this film for what it is, rather than what it isn't. Overall, this is a film that I will always throw on during a free weekend. It's like a nice bowl of vanilla ice cream. It's a little plain, but it's great nonetheless. Sure, there will always be those who claim it isn't as strong as the later Mission Impossible films, but do any of those movies have a LEGO Dimensions level pack? Yeah, just remember, we have this movie to thank for living in the LEGO Tom Cruise timeline. You've been watching The LionDog Show, have a great day, and stick around for more.